Welcome to the Casey Ingram Show Meet Your Candidate series. No spin, no agenda, no endorsements, just the candidate. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the many listeners who submitted questions for this interview. Several of those questions have been incorporated into today's discussion. Questions are not shared with the candidates prior to the interview. If you enjoy the show and would like to stay informed on local issues and elections, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm Casey Ingram. Let's get into it. Anthony Bonna is running for Florida House State Representative District 85, currently held by Toby Overdorf, who he has termed out. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
Thank you so much for having me. Look forward to the discussion.
Truly my pleasure today. And Anthony, again, thank you for joining us. This is your first interview with me as a candidate for the Florida House. My goal today is just to help voters understand who you are, what you believe, and how you would represent this district in Tallahassee. And I hope you come back again ahead of the general election in November when it gets a little bit more heated. But let's start out here, Anthony. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you decide this was the right time to run for the Florida House.
Well, I grew up in this area and I was raised by a single mom. She was working two jobs. And I had a lot of help from organizations in the community. So I was a little brother and big brothers, big sisters. I received scholarships from the Education Foundation. I received scholarships from Rotary, from Chamber. And I had the opportunity of a lifetime to attend Georgetown University, earn a finance degree. And I always knew I wanted to come back home to the Treasure Coast. And I really was very intentional about giving back to those organizations that helped me. So just finished a term as chairman of the Education Foundation. I've been a member of that same Rotary Club for over a decade. I interview students that want to come to Georgetown. And in 2018, Governor Scott appointed me to the county commission. And I had an opportunity for 8 months to really learn about local government. And I saw that service as an extension of that commitment that I have in my heart to giving back. I didn't win a full term because St. Lucie County was still very Democratic, but I did run ahead of the ticket and I wasn't discouraged. I didn't give up. And there was an opportunity to serve the city of Port St. Lucie, won a special election there in 2021. About 66% of the vote then, and then was reelected to it in 2022. During my time as a local official, there were some things. The FDOT project on Port St. Lucie Boulevard was taking forever. There was some curtailing of home rule that really frustrated me. And so I thought my perspective and the best way that I could serve the community. I haven't been in office a long time. I haven't made a career out of this. I've been in office 4 years, but I think some of the perspective I do have as a county and a city person, just someone who's been in this community for many, many years, I think that would be beneficial in Tallahassee.
We're going to talk about that home rule a little bit later because that's such a big issue right now. Many people do know you from the local government, and you've kind of talked about your service here. And I can tell the politics are in your blood now, and so is service to the people. So it's nice to hear that. I enjoy having younger people that really get involved locally, especially putting yourself out there to, in elections. How has serving at the local level prepared you even more in Tallahassee? What particular things you said? You just talked about the overreach or, preempting local rule.
Well, I think serving at the local levels prepared me in many different ways. Number one, I've actually had to make decisions. I've been the man in the arena. So I've had to, balance a budget. I've had to cut taxes. I've had to make difficult land use decisions. So voters have a record that they can judge me on, and I'm proud of that record. I'm proud to talk about that record. Additionally, I've seen the effects of some of the policies. There's some well-intentioned policies. I mean, affordable housing is a great intention. But that doesn't, there are effects on the character of the local community that should be taken into effect as well. And so I think some of that perspective would be beneficial as we go through legislation. Number three, in Tallahassee, a lot of it is working together and relationship based to deliver for the community. I'm proud to be endorsed by members of our delegation, from Representative Snyder and Overdorf and Trabulsi, Senator Harrell, Congressman Mass at the federal level. So I'm proud to have those relationships because I'm going to continue working with them to deliver for the community. And that's a benefit on things like State Road 710, which Sarah Budenziek talks a lot about, getting that accelerated. I mean, those are the kind of things that we need to have a cohesive delegation that works together. And so I have those relationships day one.
I know there's a lot of folks in Indiantown and, really the whole county, but especially in Indiantown dealing with the 710 horrific accidents out there. So I couldn't agree.
And that's not a part of my district, but this delegation has always had its strength in being cohesive and working together and being a unit. And so that's the kind of representative that I intend to be.
And what would you say are the three biggest challenges facing our district over the next 4 years?
I think, our district is not a lot like other districts. So affordability is a huge issue. So we need to have a focus on bringing property insurance rates down and bringing property taxes down. I know there's an amendment later this fall, and just making it. I always say that Florida has its challenges, but Florida is the best state in the nation. So people are still fleeing here from states like California, New York, to come to states like Florida. But that doesn't mean we can take our eye off the ball, because if you have something really great and that's doing really well, you need to maintain that focus. And so I think the legislature has done a great job on stabilizing the insurance market, but we need to continue to do more. I think growth is a huge issue and stopping overdevelopment. I've done my part in the city of Port St. Lucie to stop overdevelopment. I voted against every major developer where we're legally allowed to do so. In the past year and a half, we've acquired over 280 acres of green space, and we're trying to acquire more. We've opened up several parks and things of that nature. And so I think just attacking this out of control growth and development is something that our area needs to focus on. And then I think, affordable housing is something I would also say. But that's really under affordability. And then public safety is always a huge issue. We just need to continue not being complacent and making sure that we're doing everything we can to support our law enforcement.
In talking about the affordability issues and the high insurance premiums that folks have, what are some specific ideas you have that you would like to bring to the table in Tallahassee?
I mean, a lot of it is defense. I mean, there are people who would like to undo a lot of the reforms that we've had to fight lawsuit abuse. I know one of my opponents is running, and predominantly over a majority of his money is coming from attorneys. And that to me is very scary, because I have a very diverse, broad base of support. I don't have any money coming from one particular industry. But why is just one industry really investing in this candidate? And I think lawsuit abuse was one of the big factors that drove up costs in the insurance market. And then you want to have a competitive insurance market. So there are some policies that sound good, but if you drive all of the companies out of the state and decrease the competition, that's going to drive up rates. And so a lot of it's playing defense. And then I want to work with industry leaders and other representatives and just make sure that we're fostering the most competitive market possible.
It's been tossed out there before as an idea, but with the insurance, is there any will to perhaps allow insurance companies to work in a broader market? Maybe it's the Southwest United States region instead of by state or
I
South.
would I would fully want to understand the implications of every single proposal before committing to something like that. But for me, every idea is on the table except ideas that are going to drive companies out of the market and drive up rates.
When people look back after your first term, what do you hope they'll say you accomplished?
I think for me, one of the biggest things about service, there's very few votes in Tallahassee that are going to be decided by one vote. And for me, even on the council or the commission, there's very few that are decided by one vote. But I hope that they will say that, number one, Anthony was always frank with us. Anthony always did what he thought was the right thing. But the other thing I've always prided myself on is constituent services. So I got into the city council. I built my own virtual virtual office. So councilmanbonna.com, I made sure to do it at my own expense, so that, you don't have the critics saying, oh, he's using taxpayer money to promote himself. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to provide better service. I printed door hangers, and I knocked streets. And you know what? I didn't look at a voter file when I did that. I knocked every house, and I reached people that would never reach out. And so I want them to say that I had the most robust constituent services operation that they've ever seen from a representative, and they received the best customer service ever.
So, Anthony, your district, it's St. Lucie County and northern Martin County, pretty
Correct.
much.
Yeah. North of 714, south across town generally.
There you go. Okay, thank you. Now, you working in local government, what frustrations have you seen with state laws that affect local decision making?
Well, I think, and I've been named a home rule hero before for advocating for our local home rule. I think the biggest challenge is there's a balance. So much of public service is a balance, because you have two good things, right? I mean, the state legislature exists to provide a standard, to make it easy to do business in the state of Florida. But then you also have communities which have unique needs and unique want, and you have to find the balance. And I think the biggest thing for me is I think maybe we've reached an imbalance, and we've gone too far to the statewide standard side, and we need to implement a little bit more of home rule. But that's why we have representatives. That's why we have a legislature, because we constantly need to find balance.
So, in recent years, we've seen bills such as SB 102, the Live Local Act, and SB 180, commonly referred to as the Hurricane Recovery Law, that significantly expanded state preemption over local governments. Members of the Treasure Coast legislative delegation voted in favor of those measures. Supporters argued they addressed important statewide issues, while critics said they took away too much local authority. Looking back, do you believe those bills struck the right balance?
Looking back, I would not have voted for those bills. I was not in the legislature at the time, but looking back, I think, for example, ensuring that there's not going to be burdens in trying to rebuild after a hurricane is a good thing, right? But there was just too much preemption in there, and saying that anything more burdensome, and in areas that weren't even affected, and not defining what more burdensome was, I think presented challenges, and it really did away a lot too much with home rule.
So, with that, you just said, knowing what you know now, you would not have voted for it. But what factors would have guided your decision at the time?
When I make a decision, I consider everything. So I consider all the public comment I receive, whether that's at a meeting or whether that's via email or whether that's in person and face-to-face conversations. I consider the staff recommendations. I consider any advisory boards. I consider any groups that have a particular expertise and can provide their perspective. I consider my own legal, ethical, moral considerations, and then I come together and I make a decision, based on my experiences. And I'm not going to always come to the decision that everyone else would, but I try to take a complete holistic approach to every issue that comes before me.
So, this next part is going to be a little bit long, so I have a little bit of background here. You may not even be familiar with the project I'm going to talk about. For viewers who may not be familiar with the issue, Coulter's KL Waterside project was originally approved by the Martin County Commission as a freestanding urban service district for an industrial park. It's located out off of Canner and 90. During that process, the remaining surrounding agricultural land was represented by KL Waterside as remaining agricultural with no residential development allowed. After that approval, Coulter acquired additional adjacent agricultural property and submitted a plan for a housing development. Chair Sarah Hurd stated on her recent interview with me that the KL Group even sued the county over this proposed development. SB 86 was passed and signed into law this year. Under SB 686, the land now qualifies as an agricultural enclave, in part due to that approval of the freestanding urban service district, allowing Coulter to bypass the Board of County Commission approval and will now build a residential development at a density of approximately 3 homes per acre on agricultural land they promised would remain agricultural, and it was zoned 1 unit per 20 acres. Our current Treasure Coast delegation once again all voted in support of SB 686. Supporters argue this consistent with state law helping address Florida's housing needs. Critics argue it circumvents the original intent of the county's approval process and significantly limits local government's ability to control future growth. My question for you, Anthony, if you had been serving in the legislature when SB 686 came up for a vote, would you have supported it knowing the information I just gave you?
I mean, based solely on the information, be frank, I'm not familiar with the project, and so it's out of line with the normal decision making process that I just mentioned to you. But in principle, I think that local bodies, should make decisions on things happening in their local communities, and that's one of the reasons I'm going to Tallahassee, because yes, we need to come up with ways to make housing more affordable, but we don't need to do that at the expense of our communities, at the expense of the Martin County difference. And so I think we can do both. And so based solely on what you said and not any other research, any other background, that doesn't sound like something I'd be in support.
So, if a bill like that came before you today, what questions would you ask before voting?
I would want to know what the local community could do if they were uncomfortable with one of these projects. And that would be the biggest thing. And and if there isn't a way a local community could do anything, how do we allow local communities to do something as part of these processes?
So that brings up a question here, Anthony. As you know, with the legislature, there's 2,000 bills that get introduced, and there's a lot happening in that. What is it, 60 days? So, how do you reach out to your constituents? I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, I had no idea SB 686 was out there until it was already passed. So, it's very difficult for you as an elected official to try and let your constituents know what bills may impact them. Do you have any thoughts on that, on trying to make sure your local constituents understand what's being proposed in Tallahassee?
Yeah, I mean, I think communication has always been a big thing. For me, I think having a good staff, having a newsletter, various groups and various residents come up to visit legislators during session. I've been a part of some of those visits over the years, and so I think communication on our end, but we all have a civic responsibility too to stay informed and follow them. But there is a lot to keep track of.
So, if elected, would you support changes to restore some authority back to local governments while still encouraging affordable housing?
Absolutely. I think there needs to be a proper balance. We need to get things more in balance so that we could preserve home rule and preserve our local communities. And as a local official, that's one of the reasons, frankly, I'm running.
As a state representative, your responsibility is to vote on behalf of the people of this district. If a future bill had strong support in Tallahassee, but overwhelmingly opposed by the residents and local elected officials of Martin and St. Lucie County, would your vote follow party leadership or would it follow your district and why?
My vote would follow my conscience. So, ultimately, like I said, I weigh everything and I weigh public comment very heavily. But for example, I'm pro life. If 60% of the people in my district wanted me to support anything that wasn't pro life, I'm not going to lose my principles. People are electing a representative. We don't have a direct democracy. I would listen, I would hear the concerns. But at the end of the day, ultimately, I'm elected to represent this community and make decisions on behalf of the state of Florida in good conscience. And so, ultimately, if something, for example, was opposed or supported by 2/3 of the people in the district, that would weigh very heavily, right? So there would have to be a lot to get me to vote against that.
Okay.
But I would ultimately always vote my conscience, and that's the guide.
Have you ever changed your mind after hearing testimony from constituents? And if so, can you give an example?
Absolutely. One of the things that we did in the city of Port St. Lucie, and one of my favorite authors is C.S. Lewis, and he always says, if you're walking down the wrong road, the man who turns back the quickest is the most progressive. And so we did an initiative. It was sold to us as saving money and protecting the environment to eliminate swale liners. And so, based on the information we had received, and for those reasons, we eliminated the swale liner program. And then after talking with people in the community, we found that one, they really appreciated the swale liners. They thought that they helped keep the city beautiful, but also the effects for the environment weren't what we thought they were, and that the effects on saving money weren't what we thought they were. And so we reinstituted the program.
Now, do you believe every bill should receive the same level of scrutiny regardless of who sponsors it?
I mean, I think regardless of who sponsors it, yes. Yeah. I mean, some issues are greater than others, but who sponsors it has nothing to do with it.
How will constituents know why you voted a certain way?
I've held, one of the things I've always done is I've held town halls every year. I visited HOAs. I visit different groups, Rotaries, those kind of organizations. And so I plan to be active in the community and present. And anyone that wants to speak with me, right now, you go on councilmanbonna.com, you can request me to speak at an event. You can, and I'll show up. So,
Will you commit to explaining controversial votes publicly?
I think I have to. It's to my benefit. I mean, why let people be upset with me over a vote and not understand why I voted the way I did? I mean, it's to my benefit to communicate.
What is one tax or fee you believe Florida should reduce or eliminate?
I am well, definitely believe, and I've been on the property tax bandwagon for a long time. When I was appointed to the county commission in 2018, I found out that St. Lucie County had the highest tax rate in the state. I immediately proposed reducing the tax rate. You should have seen the looks on people's faces. Nobody wanted to do it. I couldn't even get, and all I was asking for, because they were saying Amendment 1 is on the ballot, which was supposed to be Armageddon. The their sales tax amendment had failed, and there was a school deputy funding issue at the time. And I had proposed, I said, okay, I hear you on all these. I just want to start moving in the right direction. Let's reduce it a 20th of a mil. Can we do $1 million in property tax relief? No, please, please, please don't do it. We'll do it next year after all these things happen. Well, Amendment 1 failed. The sales tax passed. The school district passed a 1 mil increase and funded the deputies. Property values are up again. I was off the commission because I had lost in the blue wave, and they still didn't cut the tax rate. And one of the things at the time I had praised was the city of Port St. Lucie, because the city had been cutting incrementally their rate. And now we've cut it every year for 10 years. We've got the third lowest city tax rate of the top 20 largest cities. But when you add the city and the county together, we jump from third lowest to the highest.
Wow.
And so it's really quite phenomenal what we've been able to do at a municipal level. But I definitely think we need major property tax reform at the state level. I said early on I was going to support whatever amendment made it on the ballot, because I don't believe that we could really make a dent in property taxes unless something comes from the state level.
So this is a listener supplied question. How are you going to vote on Amendment 3, officially titled to save our homes from excessive property taxes?
I will vote yes. And I think it's been a long time coming. And a lot of it's going to be in the implementation. So we're gonna have to see. I want to make sure that we don't just transfer and rise costs in another way. So implementation is going to have to be very strict. It's not like Governor DeSantis said. It's not the proposal I would have put forward, but it is the proposal we're voting on, and I think there's a lot of good in it as well.
Well, I would have to say, Mr. Bonna, that you were maybe ahead of this idea when you were serving on the commission. You just said you were trying to at least reduce it by $1 million property taxes. So there's some government bloat. There are areas, right, that can be trimmed. Certainly this amendment's looking to do that.
Well, and I was all for what the day after Governor DeSantis announced Florida Doge, because of the things that we were doing. The very next day, I said, "Let's bring them here. Let's pass a Doge resolution," and we passed it. We've been fully cooperating, and I think that as Governor DeSantis said when he laid this out, everyone, even the state, can do better. We can always do better. Let's look. Let's not look. Let's not looking at what we're doing and trying to do better as a failure. It's what we should always be doing. We should always be looking at ourselves and what we're doing and trying to become more efficient.
Amen to that. What role should the legislature play in improving public education while respecting local school boards?
I think the state has a role in improving education, and I've been a strong supporter of school choice. I think our local superintendent has always said that he loves school choice, which is unusual from someone involved in the public education space. But I truly believe competition makes everything better. And you look at these local school districts; they're getting A grades now. And some of these school districts, used to talk about schools in St. Lucie County, and people used to be like, "We don't want to go there." And now it's an A-rated district. And those improvements, I believe, are largely because of school choice. I think we need to do a lot more on teacher pay. And I know the state, has taken steps. I think we were, there's a stat that we're 50th in teacher pay. We're 19th in the newer teachers. And then this year they just did something for the veteran teachers. So I hope we continue improving things, because it is very important to make sure that our kids in our workforce are properly educated.
Absolutely. Now, clean water remains one of the Treasure Coast's biggest concerns. What legislative priorities would you pursue regarding water quality, septic systems, and the Indian River Lagoon?
And this is a huge priority. I think making sure that all the projects are properly funded and moving is very important. I'm very proud of what we've done in the city. The McCarty Ranch project, that water storage project, does a lot of good. I think we've done a lot of septic to sewer conversions. I think anything the state can do to accelerate septic to sewer conversions is going to be very beneficial. I think working together with the delegation just to ensure that that the proper funding is in place is important as well.
Large data centers have become a significant topic in our region. Do you believe Florida should establish stronger statewide standards governing where data centers may be built, or should those decisions remain primarily with local governments?
So I think not a fan of data centers. I think that there's a lot of health concerns that haven't been answered. There's a lot of affordability concerns that haven't been answered, and I think this is one of those issues where you probably want to have some kind of a statewide pause until we address those affordability and health concerns. Now, we also want to make sure that Florida does continue to lead the way in transportation and technology and in everything. And so, I'm not calling for any kind of permanent, but we just need to make sure we know what we're getting into before we thrust this on our communities.
We just have to understand exactly what it is, and that's the conversations you're hearing out there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What promise are you making today that voters can hold you accountable for over the next 2 years?
That I will always listen, that I'll always have an open door, and that I'll pick up the phone and call you back.
And why should someone who has never voted for you before trust you with this position?
I th- I think because they have seen me in action. So there is no one you're ever going to elect that you agree with on 100% of the things, but I have the experience, the judgment. I've been a serious local leader, and I have the ability to effectively advocate for our community. And one of the things that's really important, there's like I mentioned, there's very few votes in Tallahassee that are decided by one vote. But there's close to two-thirds of Republicans in the legislature. And one of the things is advocating for local infrastructure needs. And as a member of the majority party, as someone with the experience that I have and the relationships that I've built over the years, I think that I can more effectively advocate for the community than anyone else in this race.
Next questions, they're short. If you could answer just yes, no, and if you have to give a short answer, that's fine.
I'll try.
Okay. They're easy. Term limits for members of Congress.
Yes. I signed the
More
pledge right away.
perfect. More local control.
Yes.
Reduce property taxes if Amendment 3 fails.
Yes.
More transparency in Tallahassee.
Yes.
Should legislators be required to read bills before voting?
Yes.
Is Florida growing too fast?
Yes.
Would you oppose any bill, even from your own party, if you believed it hurt your district?
Yes.
Should citizens have more input before statewide planning laws are adopted?
Yes. However, what I would say is I don't believe that, and part of it's a communication thing, but there's a whole host of issues where folks say, well, there was never any opportunity for input, and there was the meeting of this committee, two public meetings of that committee, and then two public meetings of the next committee, and then two public meetings of the council, and then we're at the final vote when it's become. So I don't always feel that the opportunities that are available are exercised, but I definitely think there should be more engagement on issues.
Agree. And I think that's an issue for any municipality of any size. It's so tough. Residents are busy with their everyday life. And until it's already passed, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, how did that happen? But it does have two or three readings, or, it's on agendas. It's a tough thing to deal with. I don't even have a good answer for that. But finally, last question, one we're waiting for here. How can voters support your campaign and learn more about you?
We have a website, anthonybonna.com. I have a cell phone, 772-237-0984. I'm out at various events in the community. But I would just appreciate your support. We're working hard. We're knocking on doors. We're making phone calls, and we're not taking this race lightly. This is, some people say it's an R+11 district. You don't need the help. We need to focus on this game. No, I need the help, because you can never take anything for granted. You can never take the people for granted. And people are hiring someone to be their representative. And that's something that should be earned, not given.
Anthony Bonna, thank you again for taking time out today. Now you've already won the primary, so to speak. Your opponent dropped out right before qualifying, so you are on to the general election, folks. So if you see Anthony out there, go ahead and walk up, talk to him. He's definitely an open book here to talk with, and I do appreciate that very much. But we will see his name on the ballot in November. And finally, don't forget to follow the Casey Ingram Show on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube for more real talk you will not hear anywhere else. I'm Casey Ingram. Stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll see you on the next episode. And don't forget, folks, vote on that primary August 18th for the other races. Take care. So I'm going to stop